to support the field at this time, especially during COVID-19 and the continuation of school closure. And then we'll move into a discussion about what was ranked top as the most important area of focus for us. And then we'll have ΟΤΑΝ who will come on and do the same thing, a brief presentation on how they are continuing to support the field at this time. And then they'll facilitate a conversation about technology and distance learning. And then our last section that we'll be discussing today will be based on student support services. And that will be provided by myself, CAEP TAP. So that's our agenda for today. Again, this is in response to that topics poll survey we had sent out, as well as feedback that was provided from the last iteration of our regional network meetings. We wanted to make sure that this is an area that's very beneficial for everyone, so we try to plan accordingly. So now I will turn it over to Zachary, who will get us started with the CAEP update. Carolyn, are you there?
I'm here. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our next round of network meetings. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing to find ways to ensure that your students are continuing their learning, and as you're thinking about ways to have your teachers teach and how you're going to do assessments and all of that. I know that that's a heavy lift, and so I just want to thank you for all of that. One of the areas that we're really wanting some more information on as we move forward into this new school year is to gather some technology data. So we've developed a technology intake survey. It's not quite finished yet, and it's been developed with a team of individuals from the field, and it's really going to be able to look at what accessibility your students have to technology. And it's going to be posted on the CalAdultEd website, and it'll have its own link. And we're asking that you have teachers send this out to students to do as you enroll new students, that you use this intake form to assess their accessibility, as well as it's going to be available to be printed out in a hard copy so that those students that truly do not have accessibility could fill this out in hard copy, or someone could take that information from them over the phone and then put that information into the survey. We're looking at this for multiple purposes. One, if you haven't already done so at your school, this will help you get some additional information about student accessibility. Perhaps some things have changed while they haven't been enrolled, knowing that it'll be more online this fall. But the other piece is we wanted to have common questions so that we could look at this data to then share with the superintendent's work group that he has looking at the technology issues around doing distance learning. But also this could then be shared at your local level. We'll be able to disaggregate the data so that you can use it with your local representatives to talk about some of the inequities that we're seeing when it comes to student learning and the ability of students to access this learning online. So we're really looking at this as a valuable data point. I know that it's going to be a little more work for everyone, especially those whose students have to do distance learning by packets because they don't have the devices to allow them to really work online. And but we do know that this will be valuable. So again, it's a student survey, and it will be a link that your teachers can then send to their students and ask them to complete. The other survey that we're working on is similar to what we sent out in the, and I know Veronica doesn't have this on the slide, but similar to what we sent out in the spring when everyone shifted to distance learning. And that's just asking how you're going to be opening in the fall, or how you're opening this month, or how you've already opened, But we'll also be asking you some additional questions about space. If you've had any conversations with the district or community college that you're associated with who might be reducing some of your space because they're having to expand space to do any type of in-person classes. And so there's a lot of different questions in there from what we did the last time. It will be a Google form, very similar to last time, and we'll be sending that out probably in the next week or so. And I think that's all that I have as an update.
All right, thank you, Carolyn. And attendees definitely be on the lookout for a link to that survey. It will be, as Carolyn mentioned, it'll be on the website, and we'll also post it in the newsletter and other platforms as well, so everyone will have access to it. So now I will turn it over to Jay, who will talk to us about what CASAS has going on at this time. Jay?
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Anyway, I'll try to be quick. I probably have too many slides for 10 minutes. But I did want to start here. I know we've talked about this a lot, but the OCTAE Memo 20-5, I kind of feel like that, at least for the last few months, is where the buck has started. That is, you know, in the most recent memo at the end of May, they continue to allow remote testing, leaving it up to the states. Right now, they say they allow for a self-reported placement, meaning you don't need a pre-test to get on the federal tables or qualify for federal reporting, but you do need a pre and post test, like always, to report a measurable skill gain. So you can go ahead and move forward with your instruction if you're not able to test, but you still need the test to get the outcome. So it's kind of still squarely on both sides of the fence. So we've tried to come up with some things that address the concepts presented in this memo. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So at the at the state level, we have what's called Appendix C. That's part of our local and statewide assessment policy. That's the section that covers distance learning. It's the section that nobody really knew about until the last few months, but we have done a lot of updates with this section, more guidance on, you know, how to record distance learning, how to set up classes, how to record instructional hours. Of course, a lot more on remote testing, as well as information on, you know, the different types of distance learning curricula. Next slide. Okay, here's the official policy. Again, the feds left it up to every state to decide thumbs up or thumbs down on remote testing. California's obviously said thumbs up. So here's a link to that CDE memo that was sent in early to mid-May to the feds, basically outlining our state policy. You can see some of the basic concepts there on the slide. We'll go next slide. Okay, here's some benefits. We've been talking a lot about it nationwide here. Obviously, you still need to do a pre and post test to achieve gains. So that's the most obvious benefit, is there still is expectation on the Fed's part that that will still be what records measurable skill gain. You know, it also will give you flexibility to, you know, add more students who are doing distance learning. So obviously we'd say it would be a good idea to make it a part of your program. Next slide. We admit, though, there's been challenges, you know, all the uncertainty on whether schools are going to be open. You know, it took late in the summer for most of you to get that feedback. You know, lots of concerns about equity. We know a lot of students have neither the money nor the technology available. You know, those that do, you know, might be, you know, there might be plenty that do, but they're sharing it with their kids who are using it for school and so on. So we know there's a lot of issues with that. We know costs have been an issue. So the long story short is we're working on, you know, lots of improvements we're trying to have available so it won't be quite as costly, and it will address some of those students that may not have the same access as others. Next slide. Here's a bunch of information we have about remote testing, addressing Veronica's question a little bit better. We have 2 really good videos. We had a really hard time getting the videos we wanted, but after a few trials, We think we have a really good video that explains this process very well. There's a couple links there to the right of that screenshot. We've got lots of documents that basically give all the guidelines to follow on how to do remote testing. We've got guidelines for pre and post. We've got guidelines for EL Civics COAPs, as well as guidelines for the SIT. We also have that remote testing agreement that you need to complete to initiate remote testing. Next slide. Okay, here's more information on COAPs and SIT, more guidelines, a lot of recordings that provide a lot of good resources on how to work it for that. I think the big thing I wanted to impress is there have been a lot of mixed feedback on remote testing because of those issues related to equity and technology and so on. You know, a lot of steps to follow to get through it. For COAPs and SIT, I'll say the feedback has been a lot better. The overwhelming majority have had a lot of success, you know, with remote COAPs and citizenship interview tests. Next slide. You know, some other considerations, you know, I think this will be more for the open discussion we have later, but some of you have brought up parking lot testing. There is an agency in Michigan that did a video on this, so we do have more information on our website if you're, you know, kicking the tires on that as well. But there have been some that have had success doing it in parking lots, so you can thereby maintain social distancing, but still have everybody just there on a computer and not have to worry about some of those extra remote considerations. We've had some set up on-site testing in a variety of ways, maintaining social distancing. So I'll just say there's been lots of creative solutions that aren't exactly regular testing and aren't exactly remote testing either that have been a big discussion point in our network meetings all summer long. Next slide. Here's just a summary. We've got 1-to-1 and 1-to-5. This just gives you a summary of some of the various technology considerations for all the different ways to implement remote testing. Next slide. Another thing we have available here, you know, very soon, I think later this week, is the reading level indicator. Again, the feds require pre and post testing to report gains, but they now allow informal ways to place into a level in a class. So that's what this RLI is for. The big advantage is you'll be able to have students be able to access it on the website, you know, rather than having to go through e-tests. They'll also be able to do it without a proctor. So a lot, you know, so initially a lot of people are saying this is going to be easier for a lot of agencies to do, but basically you access it through TE. It's just an estimated level placement. It's not a scale score, but it will meet those placement guidelines in that federal memo, and it will allow you to move forward so you can be sure that students are in the right class and they're moving forward with their distance learning instruction. Next slide. Okay, here's just a quick screenshot on how it's used. I'll say the technology in TE, very similar to the technology on that employment and earnings survey. You're using those student portal features to send student invitations. So like that survey, you can send invitations by email, by text, or both. So you basically send that student, you know, the invite. That will give the student a passcode to where they can access it on her own or his own, you know, on the internet without a proctor, and complete that roughly 25 or so question placement test. And again, it will not give a scale score, but it will at least enable the student to place. Next slide. And I think this is the same one. Okay, so yeah, quarterly data submission. Okay, I see. So quarterly data submission is another new feature. We brought this up in accountability last week, but this year, you know, moving away from remote testing and so on, this will be where you submit your quarterly data and your data integrity report. You'll do it automatically. You won't need to submit that PDF copy of the DIR anymore. We'll start that with the first quarter submission on October 31. Next slide. Okay, here's a few more things, okay? We have some studies going on with GED and HiSET. We've had all along the ability to show that doing well on CASAS directly correlates to performing well on the GED and high set. So we're doing that on our new goal series. We're just about complete with those studies to where we now have the data to show that correlation, and we'll have that appear on the TE individual skills profile. Next slide. Another update is we've been updating some issues with learners with visual impairments. That's kind of been an Achilles heel of our accommodations for, learners with disabilities. A lot of updates to our accommodations. There's the link, a lot more helpful information now if you have individual accommodations that should be, a lot more useful, I think, than probably what we had before. But a lot of updates related to accommodations that we also think might fit in with a lot of our remote, issues as well. Next slide. Okay, another big new feature is we have what are called I3 reports. I3 is immigrant integration indicators. This is an area that I think a lot of people kind of forgot about here in COVID-19 quarantine mode. But a year ago anyway, this was obviously a really big issue. So we've moved forward on immigrant integration indicator reports. Making a really long story short, a lot of work groups a year ago showed how showed how the EL Civics COAPs that we've been using for many years relate very closely to those immigrant integration indicators. So the reports will basically connect performance on those EL Civics COAPs to those immigrant integration indicators that those field groups identified about a year ago. There will be a couple reports that will provide instructional information that will relate pass-fail results on COAPs to those immigrant immigration indicators. There will also be a new column on the CAEP summary that will now add that as an official CAEP outcome. So those should be out here in the next week or two. Next slide. Okay, that's it. Moving on to Randy, I believe.
Thank you, Jay. Veronica, should I just launch in?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So my approach to this is I tried to keep it really simple. I mean, part of which is due to the fact that a big part of WestEd's scope of work with the CAEP office is the production of the data tools, and then professional development with the field around the use of those tools to kind of help improve student journeys. So some things don't change. So we're, everything in terms of the production of the next version of the adult ed pipeline for 2021 will proceed in exactly the same way. All of the data tools produced by the Chancellor's Office are all kind of being produced according to the same schedules they have been in the past. And so the Build 4 would then be available on March 1st, 2021. But between now and then, we are trying to do some user interface and kind of resource improvements, just recognizing that people really, in times like this, want to refer to their data, look at how their students have been doing kind of historically, and think about ways to kind of improve services. So we're trying to make it easier for people who aren't used to using data tools like the Launchboard to understand how the metrics are calculated, what the numbers mean, as ways to sort of think about students and sort of have ways to serve them. Now, one of the things that we also have expanded in our scope of work for this year, and this is where it gets more interesting from perspective of how we can support you for COVID-19, is we have planned to do a lot of professional development, a lot of work with the field, including webinars, including short trainings, or different kind of online or virtual versions of the day-long workshop trainings we've done in the past around using the data tools for program improvement, how to improve your own kind of coding of your courses and programs to be sure the data shows up correct. We've had lots of requests to do work related to the implementation of AB 705 and the alignment of the CB 21 course levels with the federal EFL rubrics, and helping faculty deal with how to help more of their students transition into college credit coursework. And then we're doing a lot of work around CTE pathways. Some of you may have been on the webinar we had last week. And so, what I wanted to do is use the existing scope as kind of a pivot point for you two when we get into discussion to help identify for us if the professional development we're planning to do this year is not appropriate for you. If there's things that you think the field needs in this specific moment, concerning data and accountability, then it's really important that we know those. And so I wanted to set this frame in terms of the things we've been planning to do so we can understand better and be reflexive to kind of what you need. I will say that we are very aware that, or I guess not completely aware of what the data is going to look different this year. There's going to be, it's almost like spring of this last year and at least the first half of the coming year really kind of get an asterisk. And a lot of things are going to change in terms of the structure of the data and where the data goes. And it'll be interesting to see if some historical factors kind of hold true. So typically when the economy goes down, participation in adult education and the community college goes way up. And in particular, when the economy goes down, interest in short-term CTE training goes way up. And so we're very interested to see if that holds true this year in ways that we can support you. And the CTE data tool that we're working on could actually be an important tool to be thinking about how could you be digging in on working between the adult school and the community college to identify CTE trainings that you can offer that are really responsive to this moment in terms of what's changing. I will say that a couple other things that are in our scope that aren't really reflected here is we have offered to work with the Centers of Excellence to really kind of produce refined reports about the impact of COVID-19 on labor markets, particularly the jobs and occupations that adult school students are most typically actually do in the workforce. And so we've thought about kind of had some discussions with Javier and with Neil when he was still around about whether we could produce data sets so that if there was a need for you to reflect on where you are in your 3-year plan and think about getting ready for the next 3-year plan, that you have the most accurate LMI and community data and student data to kind of help inform that thinking and that process. So that's just kind of the general framework. So the other thing, go ahead, next slide. On the data tool side, though, I mean, some of the things that we're looking at this year, we will be, and some of this will be of particular interest to colleges, that we are going to continue our work. Nothing's going to change around our work related to kind of improving the accuracy of the data in the launch board and getting our arms around coding issues that we're seeing in terms of how colleges and folks are coding their students and their courses. One of those things is there's this issue in terms of coding supervised tutoring and study skills as non-credit courses. There's a lot of non-credit courses in this area. They get coded in ways that look just like math and English courses or basic ed and secondary courses. And so we're going to find ways to pull those tutoring services for credit students out of the denominator for the launch board. We're looking at the basic and secondary education top codes and how we can deal with the fact that we're not seeing, we don't get skills gains data related to CB21 course progression related to those. There's an issue going on in terms of the colleges that are going to be starting to use census reporting for apportionment rather than instructional contact hours, and that's going to impact our ability to identify whether students are participants or adult served reportable individuals. And so we're going to be looking at that. We've had discussions about the incorporation of CASAS and the CTE online survey data into the launch board, and we're still kind of thinking about that and are planning to talk to CASAS about that. We're continuing to work on getting the proper awards codes into MIS, and we're recognizing increasingly, and this is a discussion we have with CASAS, how do we begin to get the COAPS data and the immigrant integration data also in the launch board. And then finally, the last piece I just want to call, if you weren't on the webinar last week related to the adult education to workforce dashboard, as I was saying, I think this is, low wage workers are always the hardest hit in a moment like this. And so people are going to be looking to really repivot themselves to get back in the workforce. And so this is a time when this tool will be particularly important. This is an online tool that we can, that everybody in the state will have access to actually look at the adult education CTE courses, non-credit CTE courses, credit CTE courses, and occupations in kind of a single view for your region. And you can You can slice the data, you can look at it in different views. You have access to the underlying raw data set to look at the data for your specific institution and how that aligns with your local community colleges as ways to kind of have a better and more informed pathway conversation. And so I just kind of went through the things that we are already kind of committed to doing as a way to kind of then inform how you can identify for us what else we really should be doing in this moment, and how else we can really find ways to support you in the coming year.
All right, thank you, Randy, and also thank you, Jay, for your presentations on how you are supporting the field during this time. And I have received a couple questions, and I think there were one or two in the chat. So we're going to move into the discussion portion of this regional network meeting. And so the first area is the adult education reopening for 2020-21. And so here are the results from that topics poll that we had sent out. So as you can see, 66.7% has said that this was the top area or the most important that they're looking at this time. And some of the subtopics, the results for the subtopics were, 71.1% had talked about registration and reopening, as well as remote testing, and then registration reopening with 56.7%. And then we had an additional area that was focused on instruction. That was a top area for discussion at this time. So one of the questions that we have received in the chat were related to, and let me just pull up the chat again. One of the questions we received is, are we required to do remote testing if we are not receiving WIOA, if CAEP is our only funding source?
Okay, I can answer that. I'll defer to Carolyn first, though. If she wants me to answer it, though, I will.
So, Jay, why don't you go ahead and answer it, because I think it's relevant for you to answer it from that CASAS perspective and how we're doing the whole remote testing and all of that, please.
Okay, so the short answer is you're not required to. The feds have said you can use informal placement, but they've said if you want to successfully get a gain, the way to do it continues to be by completing a pre-test and completing a post-test. That's the way it stands now and has since late May. So, you're encouraged to. Are you in trouble if you don't know? I'll just reiterate, if you're a little unsure about remote testing, I would still say use some sort of appraisal that you use locally, or our CASAS, RLI, as a way to make sure you're at least able to get placement correct and get students in the right classes and that sort of thing. So there's not, sorry that I'm a little imprecise with that, but I think that's about as precise as I can be given the guidelines.
Well, and so this is Randy, and so I'm presuming, this may be from a college, because basically a large number of colleges do not receive WIOA Title II funds and may or may not be pre and post testing. We do not have any specific guidance about whether you have to remote test, kind of the way based on what Jay said, but also be aware that we capture EFL gains in particular for colleges who don't receive WIOA Title II funds in a couple different ways. One of which is the use of the SA07 data element, where you can actually enter the educational functioning level. And the second is based on CB21 course progression. So if they're in an English course that's basically, and CB21 we try not to use the word level, but it's the level of the course. So if they're in an English class that's coded CB21 equals C, and they move up to the B level course, then we actually record that as an EFL gain. So just because we're in COVID and you're grappling with these difficulties doesn't mean that necessarily the methodologies completely change for how you don't have to begin pre and post testing using an NRS approved instrument, but we have a way for you to enter that if you are.
Okay, thank you all very much for that. Another question that was received was asking about the fact that CAEP has to do, or excuse me, CAEP WIOA has to do 2 surveys and a mandate to do remote CASAS testing per WIOA. That was a question.
Okay, well, I wouldn't say it's a mandate. Again, right now, I'll just go back to that federal memo because I think that's the best guideline we have is, you know, it basically authorizes you to place a student and report somebody without a pretest, again, using those informal placement techniques. You know, normally you must have a pretest to qualify for reporting, period. Now they're saying they understand you don't need the pretest, but at the same time, they're saying the only thing that actually gets the gain is that pretest and post-test. So they're obviously encouraging you to do so without requiring it. So I would just say, yes, it's encouraged, but no, it's definitely not a mandate.
Okay, great. And how about to develop the local assessment policy, Appendix C, for those who have not done so?
First off, I guess I'll just say paid program announcement. There'll be a workshop tomorrow at 11 a.m., I think, you know, one of our regular CASAS workshops that will get into it a bit. So it is an hour-long workshop. That said, you know, you update your local assessment policy like you would in a year. But again, we've got some more information in that Appendix C that quite frankly, as that would be a part that we all probably ignored with our local assessment policy every year, at least most agencies. But now obviously we need a way to address things like distance learning and remote testing. So there are 4 or 5 sections in that Appendix C addressing some of those key areas. So it provides some of the overall statewide policies on how we're looking at it from a statewide point of view. And so I'll just say there's no exact format you have to do, but Appendix C is laid out in those 4 or 5 categories. So my knee-jerk reaction would be to just recommend laying it out the way Appendix C does, where you can address, you know, how you're dealing with hours, address what curricula you're using, you know, identify whether you are or are not doing remote testing and so on.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And then the next question is for you, Carolyn. Will the CDE send out a letter outlining these new requirements?
So we did send out information about the remote testing in the spring, along with our updated assessment policy. And I believe, and I just have to check with the office, I think we're going to be adding it on to our posting of information for, it'll be another section into the beginning of the year information.
Okay, great, thank you. And speaking of posted information, I did add the link to the CAEP COVID-19 webpage, which contains most of this information that we have been discussing thus far. So definitely check out that page. I went through it today just to make sure that the links we had were still relevant. And then I added quite a bit to that page as well. So definitely be sure to check out the link to the CAEP COVID-19 webpage. And so I'm checking the chat now to see if we have any additional questions regarding this area of our discussion. So I do have another one. How do we as site administrators interface with the immigrant integration indicators? Are there certain specific actions we should take? Is there a way to report citizenship attainment?
Okay, so it looks there were a bunch of questions kind of in one fell swoop. So citizenship attainment, I mean, to some extent, if you wanted to comment, Carolyn, I'm not sure, but that's just never been an official outcome. I'm skating on thin ice here, but I think 20 years of discussion, it's never really been something reported because it's always been considered to be something that's kind of out of the agency's hands. So the outcomes on the update record have always been, you know, more related to citizenship skills rather than actually obtaining citizenship, because people have always thought the skills are really what you have control over, not actually getting citizenship itself. Moving backwards with COAPs, the way, I mean, trying to make it short, but we have those 60 or so COAPs, you know, just about all of them are related to one of those 8 immigrant integration indicator categories. So the reports basically just show by individual, by class, or by agency, the pass-fail results for the COAPs you're doing at your agency, with a brief statement about what that COAP includes. I don't know if it helps, but the parallel I'd say is our CASAS competency reports, where you have that information based on pre and post tests, where you can look at the underlying competency, and it will give you that competency statement to show the specific areas of strength and the specific areas of need. So the reports will be very similar, only it will give you the statement based on the EL Civics COAP rather than the statement based on the CASAS competency.
Yeah, so Jay, I would also add that one of those, in that is that citizenship exam, you know, the practice one. So
Yes.
we do look, that's part of that COAP. So it's really more COAP based than the test based, right? Based on
Yes.
the real citizenship
Right.
interviews.
So if you did COAP, so just as an example to make it easier, I guess, if you did COAP 33 employment, you know, and the student passed that COAP, it would just give the basic statement, you know, related to employment covered by COAP 33. You'd get the pass or fail at the student level, or maybe the percentage of students that pass COAPs in that area at the class or agency level, to give you kind of right track, wrong track information on how your students are performing in those immigrant integration areas.
Yep. Okay. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you both. And if it doesn't, the person who asked the question, oh, he or she said, thank you, this is very helpful. So we have another question from Alan, and the first part of his question is regarding skills gains and remote testing. Is there any talk at the federal level about averaging payment points from previous years, given difficulties around remote testing?
So I'll take this one. So payment points is a California, that's a California thing that has been the way that we fund agencies for as long as I can remember, as it relates to our federal dollars here in California. What the individuals at OCTE, which is the Office of Career Technical and Adult Education, and specifically Cheryl Keenan in the office in the Division of Adult Education and Literacy, what she has talked about is they're really going to be looking at it. One of the reasons we're collecting the data on the force majeure piece is how we can't have, you have a student that pre-tested, but because of COVID, you weren't able to get a post-test. So they're going to have that data on numbers of students nationwide where we weren't able to do a matched test. And so really where the concern comes in all of this is that we have state targets that we're supposed to hit, that we negotiate. And if you could see me, you would see that I did negotiate in air quotes. This is really not a negotiation. And the concern is that we're not going to hit those targets. And some of those targets include some of our outcomes are students getting a job or getting a salary increase. And we know that with the employment as high as it is, unemployment as high as it is, this could be very challenging for our students. And so, it's likely that our statewide data is going to go down. And as California's statewide data goes down, the national data goes down because we skew it just a little bit. And so that's more of our concern. Now on the payment point side, our office is really going to be looking at all of this data, which we will be getting in October, to look at everyone's data as it relates to payment points. And we will be coming up with a strategy for that information, and that will be shared. But please know that we are really going to strive to not have any of our WIOA funded agencies in this current grant cycle have them see dramatic losses due to the COVID not being able to have measurable skill gains. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. And Alan, definitely let us know if you have if you need additional clarification on that or have any additional questions. But another question that Alan has posed, and it's definitely the purpose of us convening, is to learn from one another. And so Alan has asked, not sure if we will get to this later, but this is the point now, but it would be great to hear if sites are planning to do any in-person testing while following health guidelines. So if anyone who is in attendance today, if you have any insight into this, or if you at your agency are planning to do in-person training or in-person testing, while adhering to the health guidelines, if you could just either put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and engage in conversation with us, that would be great.
Yes, hello. This is Debbie Norgard from Liberty Adult Education Center.
Hi, Debbie, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, we are currently doing CASAS testing on site. We do 8 students at a time. We usually do 20, but we're doing 8 students at a time, and we're following all the social distancing guidelines. And so far, it's working out well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Debbie. And we have another question from Christy, and she is asking, when can they expect to receive the WIO again?
Well, while Jay and Randy were talking, I signed the document to get it moving out of our office. So the GAN should be coming hopefully within the next couple of weeks. Now that everything is electronic, I think it moves through our building a little faster. So hopefully very soon.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carolyn. So we will now move on with our regional network meeting and have our conversation with Penny and Netta. But before we do, if anyone else would like to let us know how you are facilitating in-person remote testing, that will be great. And then if anyone in the audience can let us know how you have successfully implemented remote testing to share with everyone, that will also be great. So we can kind of keep that conversation going as we are maneuvering to the next section in our regional network meeting. So now I will turn it over to Penny, who will get us started talking about OTAN resources and tools.
Thank you, Veronica, and welcome everyone. This has been a fascinating conversation to listen to. As Veronica was saying, OTAN is really looking to help the field in understanding what tools are available and then helping with providing additional information and resources to help on many different levels. Of course, most importantly are the ones that were identified within the survey. So first and foremost, I just want to do this. This slide is meant to give you information, and then if needed, I can go out and actually share these resources, but OTAN does have a very vast field support page that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And on that site, we have put information, including recordings, slide decks, resources, handouts about the variety of, I think we did over 200 webinars in the course of about 4 months on different aspects of remote teaching, learning, skill sets, digital literacy, equity issues, and most of these questions that have been reviewed or at least exposed in this survey that Veronica shared. We have resources to help administrators as well as teachers understand some of these tools that are available and have different means, methodologies, and strategies to use them in the classroom. Other items that are on our website are our articles led by Netta Anasari, our Teaching with Technology resources, and we're doing a bit of a revamp. And I'll let her speak to that for a moment if she's, I think she's online. If you can just kind of tell them some of the new things we're doing this year, Netta, with Teaching with Technology.
Sure. We are spending a significant amount of time aligning with the standards. If you are familiar with our Teaching with Technology resources, you can see that they have our CASAS standards and the content standards and so on. So what we really want to focus on is aligning to the college and career readiness standards along with the English language proficiency standards as well. So our team of subject matter experts will be working on this year aligning those resources with those standards.
And additionally to that, OTAN does work with a variety of different partners during the year to have different types of curriculum offers and pilots available to the field. And on our website, if you go to the OTAN webpage, which is simply otan.us, you'll see at the top of the page there's a link for resources that allows you to get to this page. There's a variety of them available, both for teachers to help with digital literacy skills, understanding blended and distance teaching, as well as for learners. And they're available for a site to contact us and let us know of their interest. Some of them are just available as open educational resources and free to use, but it's a way for folks to take a look at what's available out there, get a little practice, and then see if what works for them. The last item on this slide is just, we do have several videos out on our YouTube channel. I'll have to put a little caveat here in that YouTube is not fully accessible and does not fully align to WCAG 508 compliance. So we do put all of our videos back on our website with full accessibility, but this is a great place to go in and take a look at some of those resources that we have available. And for those who need that additional assistance with assistive technologies or accessibility, we'll be pointing them back to our OTAN website and full accessibility on our site. So membership is very important. Anybody can come into our site. It does not require a password, which for me personally is very nice because I have enough passwords that I have to remember. But it does allow you to take a look at and have the information coming out of OTAN if you opt in to receive emails and information such as that. And of course, our website itself is completely available for anyone to take a look at. And what I'd like to do is, if we go to the next slide, just to go ahead and show you what those results were. So, you know, I thought this was rather, you know, it was kind of like preaching to the choir. Well, of course, you know, everybody's going to be interested in technology and distance learning, but I think the next slide is more important. But don't go yet, Veronica, because I want everyone to understand what OTAN is offering in terms of on our website regarding technology and distance learning. And Veronica, if you'll let me, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I promise I'll only take a moment, I hope, if I can find my way around here. So I can share it. And we'll get started here. So hopefully you'll see in just a moment, because sometimes my gophers out here in the country don't always run as quickly as I like. If you can give me a shout out in the chat pod that you can see the COVID-19 field support page, I would appreciate it. I think we're
okay. We can
okay.
see it, Penny.
Thank you. So on this page, again, I got here by going from the OTAN website, and then we have this big orange button over here on the right that's COVID-19 field support. So I got here, and the reason why I landed on this page is that all that information is repeated on that first slide, but I want you to understand some of these resources that are here. So at the top of this list is this OTAN resource guide, and I'll show you this in just a moment. This is a wonderful curation of materials, resources, and information by our project specialist, Anthony Burrick. He has done an amazing job of taking all of this information that we have been throwing out to the field and bringing into the field, on this page, and I'll show that to you in just a minute. And well, we also have one of our stellar agencies create this app-mazing volunteers called I Can Go the Distance. And this is really like a menu of what are the types of things I can do for the different program areas. So if I open this up, you'll see that it's a Canvas page, and it's basically, what am I wanting to do? What are some of the goals, and how do I get there? And this is just a great kind of appetizer about what can I do to get started, and first course, second course. I thought that was very creative of how they put this together. And it's a nice bird's eye, high level macro view of some of the resources that are available in different program areas for going the distance. Additionally, on that page is a new report from World Ed. This is called Ready, Set, Go, Steps to Rapidly Start Distance Instruction. This is a brand new report. I think the date is in July. So this is something that can really be a great, that weekend reading with a glass of wine and, maybe you're out by the pool. Just take a peek at this as how you can start working with your learners and your teachers to ensure that you can create a successful distance learning program. And this is again, kind of that macro view. And so anyone can go through here and read this. And they're all very finite and doable tasks to set up a great program. Again, this is answering this question of how important is technology in distance learning, okay? West Contra Costa has also shared with us remote learning via student mobile phones. That's kind of where we are today. Most of our learners, they definitely have a phone, but they don't necessarily regard it as something that they can learn from. And this is something that can show that, yes, they actually can. And it's something you can ask your teachers to review because it is also something they can embrace perhaps. A lot of our teachers still sometimes are a little hesitant about looking at technology as helping with teaching. And unfortunately, we're at that point right now where it is the primary means that we're able to teach. So I'm going to go next to the resource list here for continuing learning and teaching. And again, this was done by our project specialists. On the left-hand side here is a outline that you can jump to very quickly if you're wanting to learn about a particular type of tool, looking for resources in a program area, etc. So I'm going to scroll through this, and I apologize for those of you that are on small screens because you probably can't see this very well, but they are linked within the PowerPoint presentation. But it gives you some great tools for communications. And when you start reading that Ready, Set, Go document, these types of things will make more sense. Looking about making a web conference more inclusive, looking at using video, using different types of video creation tools. So I'm just going to scroll here for a second. Simple activities about using flashcards, creating online forms, creating infographics. And what has happened, what is provided here is if we have OTAN materials on those items, we link you directly to them. So farther down, we look at assessment. That's a big hot topic. What are different ways that you can assess your learners remotely, even face-to-face with social distancing? Exit tickets, using different types of websites, learning management systems. And I see the note, the links in the PowerPoint aren't working for me. They will work if you put it in presentation mode. So if you're just looking at it like in edit mode, they don't work unless you copy the link and paste it into your browser. Here's other resources for online curricula. And I'm really trying to kind of scroll down because I want to get to the item at the bottom, which is a great resource in terms of the a curated, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I think I'm in the wrong spot. Netta, help me out. Where's our, I think I've lost it. Our listing of our different webinars. I think I'm on the wrong page. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries. You can actually get to it. So if you click on to previous OTAN webinars right there.
There we go. Thank you.
Perfect. So that has a table, but if you scroll down all the way in the bottom, you'll find the index that'll help you kind of filter through some options. And that was also designed by our project specialist, Anthony Burek.
Anthony
is on the line. So shout out to Anthony.
Yes, a big shout out to Anthony. So the reason why I'm going to do this fast, so close your eyes, don't watch the scroll, because I think the index is easier in many ways for those of you that are looking for specific things. So I'm going to go real fast. So it's down here at the bottom. So if you're looking for anything on gamification, we've got a couple of webinars that we did that are linked to, using Google Meet and Zoom to gamify remote classes. If you're looking for information about doing different types of activities using different technology tools in ESL, we have a bunch of them listed here. Some of you are definitely interested in equity, accessibility, etc. So we have a couple of webinars on equity. So this is a great resource that Anthony put together, curating all of these things that OTAN has been doing over the past several months. So you have an idea of where you might be able to find some of these tools to give you more information about this topic, this tool, or this resource that can perhaps help you build your online and distance learning programs. So this gets to the second slide in the slide deck that Veronica has, and I think I've got it right here so I can just pull it up real quick, which is all about this piece, this whole bit about, oh, these are the questions and concerns about the different, whoops, okay, I got to switch this over. And we didn't want to go this way, so hold on, let me see if I can just do this way. Because I personally look at these about, you know, digital literacy courses. There's a lot of them out there, and I want to make sure that you know where they are. I put them in the notes here in the document, so if you have a copy of the PowerPoint, it should be there. But you can see by the websites I've brought up, for example, North Star. Many of you already know about North Star, but here is a place that you can send your teachers as well as your learners to gain more digital literacy skills. It can be just on a particular type of essential computer skills or software skills, or all about using technology in daily life. They provide the materials to help learners study, and they provide the assessment to ensure that they meet those particular types of goals and certifications for level of skills. And then on Google for education, they have their Applied Digital Skills program, both for students and teachers to know more about how to get going, create some engaging lessons, use and help learners gain those invaluable skills, those digital literacy skills that we all need to do. So I know that we've had lots of questions about access, and by access I mean how do we get these tools? And I'm going to ask this question, and it should have been a poll question, and Veronica, this may be something we can do for next time around. But for all of you that are attending this regional meeting right now, how many of you were able to, as an adult education program, piggyback on any K-12 device distribution? So if your K-12 schools was offering Chromebooks or hotspots or anything like that, how many of you as adult schools were able to jump on that bandwagon? Anybody? So far, lots of no. Nope, nope, nope. Can I get a yes from anyone? Okay, I'm seeing the no's come through. The reason why I asked this is I've talked to others. Oh, Karen, I like that. You got a Wi-Fi hotspot in your school parking lot, because that gets to some of those other questions or those other high points in the survey about, you know, how do we get learners access? Many of the K-12 schools were able to provide some of these devices, but oftentimes the conversations did not include adult ed. So Wendy, K-12 piggybacked on adult ed. Okay. That's where adult ed, being as quick as they are, sometimes are the best resource because they can move so quickly. So Soledad, you got the district provided hotspots. Some of them are getting very creative about how they provide access to learners, because many of our agencies, whether they're adult ed schools or K-12 schools, did not have any idea how little access their learners had, whether they're K-12 or adults, in their district. So I think that's something that we as an adult education group, we now are learning more and more about this, and we can and helped to be part of the discussion about, you know, talking with our districts and getting ourselves, you know, on the map, so to speak. So the survey talked about accessibility. Let me see if I missed anything else on here real quickly. We also talked about curriculum. And this is an area that is, I am personally very much about open educational resources, but OTAN does help agencies when you're looking for assistance about what kind of curriculum and materials may be best for you. So it's usually best to just reach out to us, and depending on what your needs are, we can try to give you some ideas or at least some resources so you can do your due diligence to find out if it's going to work for you. Again, there are some resources on the slide deck that you can see here about access and inclusion and some of the curriculum options that might be useful. As you can understand, since we are federally funded through a grant, we're not going to, proclaim one better than the other. We definitely want you to take a look for yourself and see what works best for you. I think the last one's on here, assessments, EL Civics. Again, I believe all of our resources that we have out on our OTAN resource page is really the first place to go to have you look at what is available. And then, this may be a team effort with your teachers to see, okay, what's going to really work for your agency. Last couple of things that might be useful for you, and Ned, I may toss it back to you to see if I've forgotten anything here, but some of our partner groups, and I'm sure you're aware of Pro Literacy and perhaps EdTech Center from World Ed, they have put out a new report, and this is like as of July 31st. And this is a really interesting read about the rapid response from the field. Of course, this is national, but it is something that you might give you a little perspective on how you move forward with your planning with your programs. So I'll leave it at that, and I will let loose control here back to Veronica, so you can take over and bring up the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Netta to see if there's anything that I missed throughout this little chat.
No, you definitely did not miss anything, but I wanted to hear kind of some of the efforts that maybe the group has made, for their fall planning, and so that all of us on the line can kind of hear from some of the practices. So I'm looking through some of the chats here. I'm going to pick on a couple of people. Let's see, Eric Pomeroy, tell us what you're doing. Is it North Central Consortium? If you can share with us some of the practices for DL and technology that you put in place for the fall.
Sure, Netta, thanks for picking on me. So in Sutter, we're doing a number of things. And really, thanks for all the work you guys have done on OTAN, because it's been amazing. We're still doing Zoom in all of our classes. For our ESL, ABE, ASE, we're still doing Google Classroom. ESL specifically, we're using Burlington English, ABE Aztec, and ASE Odysseyware. In our CTE program and all of our integrated programs, we're using Canvas, and we've aligned that with the Yuba Community College District. We're doing a lot of project-based learning. We're adding writing in that. Eventually, we're hoping to go to Canvas as a single sign-on, because Canvas will work as a single sign-on for all of these programs. And there's so much stuff out there, we don't want to overwhelm our teachers, and there's been so much great work that's been done. So we're trying to keep it simple right now. As far as logistics go, we're following suit with our districts. And so, of course, everyone's doing the online piece first. We're hoping to do it a hybrid. We have open office hours online, so that's kind of unique. And we have grouped all of our students, so we do have time built in for some direct instruction and grouping through either Zoom or Canvas. So again, at the end of the day, hoping to use Canvas as overall, and we're looking at that as a consortium platform. So for instance, I know Karen Lou's online. I can pick on her. So this is kind of like popcorn. I'll pass the love and pick on Karen Lou, but we're hoping to offer some classes even through our consortium that anyone in the consortium could take through Canvas. And that's kind of our goal, is to share those resources, especially knowing that budget cuts are coming soon. Actually, I wasn't fast enough to answer the question, but we were able to piggyback on some of our districts for resources. There's a huge shortage of Google Chromebooks, as everyone knows. So we are being very judicious on how we're loaning out devices. We did get a lot of hotspots. We were able to get some COVID relief money through our districts, and then share those resources with our adult program. So that was a big win for us. And then we're leveraging a lot of CTE dollars through multiple sources for our CTE classes. So we're really pretty overwhelmed at this point, but we're trying to be as organized as we can. Does that help, Netta? Was that kind of
Yeah.
in the...
That's perfect. I
Yeah.
was mostly wanting to hear from you on how some of your planning has been going. And I know we have about 3 more minutes left for this particular topic. So I'm going to ask Rhonda Belmain to chime in from Folsom Cordova to kind of tell us a little bit about what Folsom Cordova has been up to for fall planning and bringing their students back online.
Great. Yeah. Hi. No problem. Yeah, it's very similar. So we are doing online registrations with our students, and that's going very, very well. Actually, our high school diploma and high school equivalency program is pretty full. Not ESL though. ESL, the enrollments are very, very low. As far as planning goes, we've had a lot of teacher time, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of meetings. We've really kicked it up as far as our meeting time. We meet weekly right now to try to figure all this out. We are also following along with our school district. We are going to be starting out with Zoom and then moving into Microsoft Teams. As far as our platform goes, we're going to be using Google Classrooms, but there's a lot of talk around moving to Canvas at some point. I think we're going to be doing that, but maybe not right away, a little bit down the road, because we have so much going on right now, and one thing at a time. So, but we do want to be organized. We do want to be working in Fidelity. So we are going to be doing Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. We're going to be using the Ventures curriculum online, as well as Burlington English. We use the Remind app quite a bit. It's a staple here at the school to communicate with our students. And also, we are doing not orientations, but we're doing testing on site. We're doing 5 students at a time. They're coming on to the school campus, and we have safety practices in place. In fact, we don't really meet with the students one-on-one. We're sitting outside. We have tables set up, and they go in and they test. We mark which computer they're supposed to sit at. They're very spread apart. And then they come outside, they go to a table, they get the information that we direct them to take, and then they leave. So we've been doing that. What else? I think that's about it. As far as this transition to distance learning, though, I just will add, we do a lot of social media and post a ton of stuff. So that's been helping.
Thank you, Rhonda. So I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Veronica. We just kind of wanted to use this space to collaborate and kind of hear from some of your colleagues to see how some of the planning is going in their technology and distance learning efforts for the fall and spring semesters to come. So I'll hand it back to Veronica. I think we've kind of went over our time. Sorry, Veronica.
No worries at all. No worries at all. We definitely want to hear from the field and how you all are, providing services during this time. So we can definitely keep the conversation going in the chat. We are going to move on to our third section, which is student support services. This was our 3rd ranking area of importance. And so you can see that it's pretty equal across the board in terms of ranking most important to about mid-level importance. And in terms of our subtopics, some of the areas that were highlighted are, of course, employment at 54.2%, and then we have counseling, transition services, and then on from there is mental health support. And so one of the things that we wanted to kind of talk to everyone about is how you all are leveraging either partnerships with community-based organizations, your local workforce development boards, or other employment type of agencies to help or support your students in employment efforts. And so if I can have, just a couple people engage with me on this topic, either via the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you. And again, we're talking about leveraging partnerships with employment agencies to support adult learners in gaining access to employment.
Hi, this is Wendy from Sierra County and the Feather River Adult Education Consortium.
Hi,
So, hi. And I also put a question in the chat. Maybe we can deal with that later or even after we go offline. But so we are a newly funded WEO agency. And so we are just now starting the process of getting our MOUs for services in place. And so in the past, we have had really high success with regard to referring our adult ed students to our local Workforce Accountability Board, not our regional one, from the CAEP perspective. And the services have been phenomenal. I'm hoping that that is going to remain the case with our bigger agency partnership. And I'd really like to hear from others and how they are putting together or have their MOUs put together for services, because we're in the developmental process of that. And they are still very much in a non-customer contact mode. So I'd really like to hear from others and how you guys are moving forward with that, if that's a doable thing.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there anyone who'd like to unmute themselves to engage with Wendy on her question about starting up the MOU process? And also feel free to use the chat.
Hi, this is Sarah Merrick from Alturas up in the Northeast. We have Alliance for Workforce Development renting a room and space in our adult ed building. And I also work often with social services. They have clients who are our students. And we communicate back on progress and how things are going. And the same with clients for Alliance for Workforce Development. They call me about progress and connect that way. And they send me students who need education, and I send them for job information. It works out well.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing how you are handling the situation. Anyone else? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone else, but if you have any insight into leveraging partnerships to access employment opportunities for your adult learners, definitely feel free to type it into the chat. Another area of importance for everyone was counseling and transition services. And so one thing that we wanted to know from the audience is, how has your agency or consortium transitioned to remote transition and counseling services? Are you facilitating weekly meetings with counselors and transition specialists, drop-in office hours, using a Google group, any of those methods that are effectively working and you're still able to provide these services to your students? If anyone like to unmute themselves and or type in the chat. Okay, does that mean that counseling and transition services are no longer being provided, or how is that working in the remote or the virtual environment?
So Veronica, this is Eric from Plastic School for Adults. Hi, so we have counselors who make themselves available for one-on-one orientations, transcript analysis, and enrollment in high school diploma and GED using Google Meet. We're also going to be conducting some orientations via for CTE using Google Meet as well. It's a lot more challenging trying to school up our clients, our students, so that they even know how to access it. You know, digital literacy is one of the key factors, and it's very mixed out there in the wild. But it obviously takes more time. It's more involved, and we worry too about the folks that we're missing just because of the lack of technology at home or digital literacy.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric, for sharing. Definitely appreciate that insight. If anyone else would like to unmute yourself and share, that would be great, or you can use the chat as we mentioned previously. And as we are talking about counseling/transition services, the other area that came up as an area of importance is mental health support. And so we all know that preservation, both as educators and also as adult learners, is essential for everyone and our well-being. And so one thing we wanted to know from the audience is how are you helping to keep you, your staff, and students healthy and at optimum functioning levels at this time? Anyone have any activities that you are engaging in, any resources that you are providing to your adults at this time? Okay, and I know for CAEP on the website, we did add quite a few resources that are primarily at the state level, but we did add resources around emotional support, as well as homelessness and housing and things of that nature on our COVID-19 page. So definitely feel free to check out those resources and see if they would be a benefit to your adult learners. And thank you all for everyone who have typed in the chat how you are providing counseling and transition services. So we have about 8 more minutes left of our regional network meeting. So if there's anything that we have not covered this afternoon that you would like to, if you have a question that you would like to ask, or if there is an area that you would like to further discuss, if you have any questions for Jay, Randy, Netta, or Penny, or even Carolyn, everyone's still on the line. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat and we can address your questions. This is kind of the open discussion area. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I do see discussion, sorry, but I don't see any additional questions. Does anyone have any resources that they'd like to share, either via URL or a document that you can share in the chat that would be beneficial to everyone around the areas we have been discussing, which are adult education reopening, technology and distance learning, as well as student support services. The other 2 areas that we had in our topics poll were related to professional development, as well as data, accountability, and sustainability. So if you'd like to discuss any of those topics, or if you have resources you'd like to share, definitely feel free to post them into the chat. And yes, the slides will be available today. They have been repeatedly posted in the chat, so I can get them up really quickly, but they will also be posted on the CAEP website. We do have a page for our regional network meetings where we where we place our recordings as well as materials for the regional network meetings and any resources that come out of the regional network meeting. So I'll post the URL of exactly where those materials will be. And then I'll also post the slide deck right now. Okay, the slide deck is opening or uploading, excuse me. And we have about 5 more minutes if anyone has anything they would like to cover before we break. Anything else from CASAS, ΟΤΑΝ, WestEd, or Carolyn from the CAEP office that you'd like to share before we close out?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Hi, this is Carolyn. I'd just like to thank TAP for continuing these and for doing the survey so that we know what topical areas we want to have to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Can I ask a question while we sorry, I don't know if I can be heard right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you better now.
Hello?
Yes, are you there?
Okay. Sorry, our internet, our power just went down, so I'm not sure that the cell signal actually is all. I'm curious to hear from other sites supporting high school equivalency students, not diploma students, but high SET or GED students, and how the systems that they support of those students when we have such a diverse array of different learning levels and kind of individualized support that's needed. I'm wondering if there are any sites out there that can share what systems they've set up to support high school equivalency students.
Anyone want to unmute themselves? Okay, so in the chat, we see Lassen Community College is using kitfastforward.org, allowing students to keep learning online. And then added to that, this is for their high SET program.
Hey, Veronica. As far as
Yes.
like open educational resources, CK12 has a community contributed textbooks that cover GED, but that don't necessarily specify high SET, but you can find some valuable curriculum on CK12 to help address the high school equivalency folks. They might be tagged as GED contributed textbooks, but they can definitely serve the purpose of overall high school equivalency. And I know Penny just put the website for CK12 in the chat. What I'll do is I'll follow that up to the community contributed URL so that you could find the textbooks a little bit easier. So give me a couple of seconds to do that and I'll post it in the chat.
Thank you, Netta. Appreciate that. And I am currently pulling the URL of exactly where the recording, as well as the resources that come out of this meeting, will be posted on the CAEP website. And it is now posted. The recording, as well as the resources, will be posted by tomorrow midday. So definitely check back for access to those resources and share them with others, whomever you see, whomever you feel will benefit from these resources. We will continue our regional network meeting on Wednesday with the Bay Area. And so that's Wednesday, August the 12th at 1:00 p.m. Again, the same type of structure where we are aligning our conversation with the areas of importance that you all have identified in our topics survey. Randy, did you have anything else you would like to add before we close?
Really only that we strongly encourage both regions and people to reach out to us if there are services or professional development activities that we can actually help support in the regions.
Great, thank you so much, Randy, for that. And in the chat, I see that there is sharing of information for HiSET and GED prep, for Spanish speakers. Okay, great. Well, the time is now 2:30, so we are concluding our regional network meetings. If you have any additional questions or any other areas that you feel would be beneficial to discuss during our next regional network meetings or through the end, which the last one is on Wednesday at August 26th, please feel free to email TAP, that's tap@caladoed.org, and we'll be sure to include those topics of discussion into our overall discussion during the regional network meetings. We appreciate your time this afternoon and your contribution to the conversation, and we hope that this was beneficial for you and that you will share this information with others and continue to engage in conversation with us. Thank you to Carolyn from the CAEP office. Thank you to Penny and Netta from OTAN, Jay from CASAS, as well as Randy from WestEd, and CAEP TAP, so Renee Collins and Holly Clark for assisting with today's regional network meetings. And thank you all in the audience for engaging with us, and we hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you all so much and have a great afternoon.